Welcome back to day 98. Today's pose is probably my nemesis. It's a pose that I've struggled with probably all my yoga practice. So I have very tight hamstrings, and I thought I would save this for last, but I can't go without because it is such a common pose in yoga practices. It's called the seated forward fold or Paschimottanasana. So there's different ways to practice, which I'll demonstrate. We could use a strap, but I'm not going to show that today. You could have that around your feet. I just find it's a little stressful trying to hold the strap with your arms. We use a blanket to sit a little lifted with our hips. You might have another blanket and blocks, or if you have a bolster or a firm pillow from your couch, you could use that as well instead of the blocks and blanket that I'm going to demonstrate. All right, let's get started. Sitting up nice and tall, take your arms out to the side. Take a nice inhale, palms overhead, and exhale, lower. Continuing as you raise your head, looking upward. Exhaling, lowering chin to chest. Allowing yourself to arrive to your one pose practice today. Next time you draw the palms overhead, exhale, your palms together and down. All right, so this is a great pose for opening up the backs of the legs and even the back of the spine. The real challenge to this pose is getting some movement in your hips. So it could be good to practice a little pelvic tilt tucks. I'll demonstrate. So you could do that seated or standing or in a chair. I'm going to sit cross-legged. You could be seated with your legs out in front of you, but maybe take hands on your hips and you're going to roll your hips back, thinking of rounding your spine, and then use the lower abdominal muscles to roll your hips forward, get a little arch in the back. So you want to feel that nice movement forward and back of your hips. It's that hinging in the hips action. So you notice when I roll back and I round my spine, this is what we want to avoid. So as you roll your hips forward, you feel that it gets a little bit nice and neutral. Now we can exaggerate here in our tilt tuck and we're arching, so we don't want to do that. What helps is the prop of the blanket. So that helps to lift our hips. And as I sit forward on the soft rounded edge of the fold, if I sit a little forward, you can see that it helps my hips. So if I sit kind of in the middle or the back of the blanket, you might get like it's a little bit harder. You really have to think about rolling those hips forward and use your core to stay there. If I slide a little more forward, it kind of catches the sit bones, and that helps for you to sit up nice and tall more easily. And it gets the hips above the legs that could be really tight in the hamstrings. So that's what I like to do. You could always sit flat on the floor, but just make sure you're trying to keep your spine nice elongated and you're hinging at your hips to fold forward in the seated position. All right, I'm going to move back. We'll demonstrate. And you can practice with me, since I think seated you can see much better. Have your blocks and your extra blanket nearby, or maybe you have a bolster or that firm couch pillow that can fit under your knees. So as I sit on my folded blanket, you don't want to sit too high, only because then what happens, as I straighten my legs in the seated forward fold, your hips, your knees, your ankles, your toes are all in alignment. First thing we do, we come into more like a staff or dandasana pose. I think of lengthening my legs through my heels. I'm pressing my heels into the floor, rolling the toes up towards the ceiling, and I'm sitting up nice and tall. For me, this nemesis pose, I already feel it in my calves and my hamstrings. So it takes me some time to warm up. Once I warm up, I get pretty good. But if I'm a little tighter, it takes some time, and I really need to breathe into it. So where do you want to feel the stretch of this seated forward fold? They like to feel the stretch in the middle of the main muscle. That's the focus. So here it's the hamstring. You want to feel it between the knee and the sit bone. You want to try not to feel it right at the sit bone, because that's the attachment, and that means that the tendons are pulling. So And the same thing, you could be feeling it in your calves, so you want to feel it right in the middle of the calf muscles, not at the knee or down in the Achilles. So if any of that happens as you fold forward, then we're going to either back up so you don't feel it or bend the knees slightly. So here's a trick. In seated forward fold, we try to, like we said, hinge at those hips to keep your spine as neutral as possible, leading with the center of the heart. So to be honest, I'm about here right now. I haven't really fully practiced before this video. I've warmed up, but not fully practiced on opening my legs. I want to be completely open and honest here. Us yoga teachers, we're not all Gumby. Okay, so I bring my hands either side, roll my shoulders back, lead with my chest. Try not to just drop my head around my spine to feel like, oh yeah, I'm almost there. Look, I can reach my toes. That's so great. But really, I'm compressing my spine. I'm compressing my chest. So it doesn't matter that you can touch your toes. You want to feel that sensation of stretch and opening. So I take my arms by my side. You could use your blocks. Just help to raise it up. I'm going to sit a little back, get my hips rolling forward. Take your hands on your blocks, shoulders roll back. So this is where I also said you could have a strap and I'm holding to pull my toes a little bit more back towards me, but I feel like then I'm kind of straining my back, my shoulders. I'd rather just rest my arms, lead with my heart, and breathe into it. So when you find your edge of your stretch, pause and hold and notice where you're feeling that sensation of stretch. Now, let's come out of this and try a modification. If you have a bolster, you can bring the bolster. We're going to bring it under 2 blocks, long ways under my knees, and just for a little padding and maybe a little bit more height. I could use that. That's not bad. It's not really pressing into my legs, so I could use that. And what it does is it helps to give a little soft bend in the knees, but I can fold forward maybe a little bit more and feel that stretch at the backs of the legs. And you could get a little farther, so we'll just breathe into that. If I want to get a little higher or have a little more padding, I put a folded blanket on there. So now we're getting into a nice comfy seated forward fold, but still it's doing the work. But you can see it helps me hinge my hips, keep my spine nice and neutral, and breathe into it. So let's set up. Come into any position that you like. Using your props, maybe try that. Or you can use without the props. Legs straight out, hips, knees, ankles, and toes all in alignment. Sitting up nice and tall to start, shoulders back. Start to hinge at your hips. Notice when your spine wants to round, and that's where you stop. Breathe into it. Think of leading with the heart. Take some nice breaths in and long extended exhale out as you feel the body start to soften. You might feel that you can hinge just a little bit more. This might be a good way to warm up, and then you can come back into the seated forward fold, Paschimottanasana, without the props under the knees. So whichever works for you. Now, the theory behind holding poses for stretching, increasing flexibility, that you really need to stay here for at least 90 seconds, nice up to 2-4 minutes, breathing with that extended exhale, and that allows the proteins in the muscle to unwind, letting go of that constriction or contraction, that gripping, and allow them, the fibers, to lengthen. So you can see my body starting to release. I might be able to Move the blanket, come onto the blocks. So you could do the same if you're using that. Really think of leading with the chest, folding at the hips. You want to feel like your belly wants to touch your thighs before your chest comes down. And then you might use a timer at some point when you take your extended exhales or an extended breath. Count how many breaths it takes for a minute. Could be 10, 12 extended breaths. And then you know in the future, without using that timer, how long you can stay in the pose for like 2 minutes at a minimum, building up to build that increased flexibility. After your next exhale, let's walk our hands back. You can remove the blocks, lean back into your hands and just gently bounce the legs and roll them in and out. And then we'll come to sit up nice and tall, closing out the practice today. So you found out my nemesis pose, forward fold, especially seated forward folds. But I continue to practice it. It's those poses that are most challenging, which are probably the ones that we do need to focus and practice on. All right, thank you for joining me. Let's take our nice closing breath, inhaling, palms overhead. Exhale your palms together and down. I thank you for practicing with me today. I look forward to seeing you back tomorrow.